This is a Second Thought video in collaboration with Kento Bento. Make sure to check out their video after this. For years, society has been obsessed with the idea of some far-off point when the future begins, usually involving flying cars or spaceships or super-intelligent robots. Regardless of when we think this bright and shiny future will arrive in all its glory, it's exciting to try to predict upcoming events, especially those within our lifetime. But there are so many possible future events around the world that we'd never be able to cover the most interesting ones. So, without further ado, let's take a look at a few of the projected events in North America by the middle of the century. Just around the corner in early to mid-2019, we'll get to witness one of the most highly anticipated space launches in recent memory. The James Webb Space Telescope, originally slated for launch in October of 2018, will finally begin its operations in space, giving us new insights into the early universe, capable of seeing the very first generation of stars that formed just 200 million years after the Big Bang. Webb's four main objectives are to study the formation and evolution of galaxies, search for light from the first stars and galaxies that formed after the Big Bang, understand the formation of stars and planetary systems, and to study these planetary systems and the origins of life. The launch of the James Webb Space Telescope will mark the beginning of a very exciting time for space exploration. In 2020, we'll see the first test flights of NASA's quiet supersonic technology. Their new low-boom supersonic passenger planes will be a departure from traditional tube and wing airplane construction and are intended to make air travel greener, safer, and quieter, reducing fossil fuel use, emissions, and noise. The new technologies employed by these planes will lead to a savings of approximately $255 billion between 2025 and 2050. Also in 2020, Glacier National Park in Montana will have become completely ice-free, the park's namesake having disappeared as a result of global warming. An earlier prediction for this event put the estimate at 2030, but more recent data gathered in 2009 has indicated a temperature increase more than twice as rapid as previously thought. Many cold water-dependent plants and animals will die off, including a number of rare species. The lack of spring melt will decrease the overall water level in the area and lead to more frequent and severe wildfires. Finally, 2020 will also see a drastically increased number of drones patrolling the skies of the United States. In 2012, there were about 7,000 drones used mainly for counter-narcotic applications and public relief efforts. By 2020, we'll see a fleet of official drones sporting advanced monitoring equipment, including infrared cameras and radar, and some models will even be equipped with tasers and rubber bullets. In some cities, these drones will be used to monitor protest and spy on citizens with no warrant or legal process. Needless to say, these plans have raised some very serious privacy and civil liberty concerns. In 2023, NASA will launch the first manned test flight of its Orion spacecraft, the vessel that will eventually take humans to Mars. 4 astronauts will be carried to a distant orbit about 71,000 kilometers from the Moon for about 2 weeks. This mission will be the first time humans have left low Earth orbit since Apollo 17 in December of 1972, more than 50 years earlier. On April 8, 2024, North America will experience a total solar eclipse. It will be the first total solar eclipse visible from the US since 2017, the first visible from Mexico since 1991, and the first visible from Canada since 1979. It will be the only total solar eclipse of the 21st century where totality is visible from all 3 countries. In 2025, we'll potentially see another amazing spacecraft make its debut. The Advanced Technology Large Aperture Space Telescope, or ATLAST, will dwarf not only Hubble, but also the James Webb Space Telescope, with a 16-meter primary mirror versus 6.5 meters on Webb. ATLAST will be designed to search for life in the galaxy, detecting biosignatures such as oxygen and water. The craft will have such a powerful resolution that it'll be able to detect the composition of atmospheres and the ground conditions of exoplanets up to 150 light-years away. By 2028, scientists expect to have brought several extinct species back to life. Back in 2009, the first successful de-extinction lasted just 7 minutes after a Pyrenean ibex was born and quickly succumbed to lung defects. The species most likely to be brought back include the wild pigeon and the dodo. By the end of the 2020s, any hope of recovering the Titanic will have faded. Decades under the water and exposure to metal-eating bacteria will have reduced the once mighty vessel to an insignificant rust patch. However, some artifacts on board may remain in a recoverable state. By the beginning of the 2030s, many experts expect the United States to be declining as a world power. Growing national debt, drastically reduced manufacturing, and an overstretched military are expected to weaken the US economy significantly, allowing other nations a chance to grab some of the global spotlight. We may see Shanghai eclipse Wall Street as the leading financial center, and China and India are expected to make a huge impact on the world stage. The US will maintain its superpower status, but will probably be less of the behemoth it once was. By the latter half of the 2030s, we could likely see permanent manned bases on the Moon, made possible partly by the development of new heavy-lift rockets. It's expected that NASA, other foreign space agencies, as well as private organizations will be researching and constructing human habitats both independently and in cooperation with foreign and domestic partners. By 2037, the number of bombers in the US Air Force will have fallen below the required 170 aircraft due to a number of reasons, including the decommissioning of the last B-52s. Currently given the clever codename 2037 Bomber, this new generation stealth bomber will supposedly be the most advanced aircraft ever created, equipped with unparalleled stealth technology, a range that enables it to strike targets almost anywhere in the world, a payload which includes nuclear capability, and the option to be piloted remotely or even completely autonomously. During the early 2040s, we'll likely see a submarine mission to Saturn's moon Titan. NASA will deliver an unmanned submarine probe to one of the huge methane lakes on Titan, and the craft will gather critical data and high-definition video of the strange subsurface world. This environment couldn't support life as we know it on Earth, but that doesn't mean we won't discover something a little more alien. Also, during the early to mid-2040s, we'll probably see the last World War II veterans pass away, marking the end of first-hand accounts of what will probably be the last global-scale war. Some of these veterans may live to see the 100th anniversary commemoration of D-Day on June 6, 2044. On this date, a time capsule will be opened close to Normandy which contains newspaper articles and letters from the time, including a message from President Eisenhower to future generations. By the end of the 2040s, many Gulf Coast cities will have to be abandoned due to the ongoing threat of super hurricanes. Climate change will have sparked the emergence of these unbelievably powerful storms, leading to the temporary and sometimes permanent evacuation of coastal cities. 200-mile-per-hour winds, flash floods, and waves dozens of meters high overwhelm cities like Houston and New Orleans, causing untold devastation. And finally, by 2050, we should see a world more connected than ever before. At this point, practically all major continents, with the exception of poor lonely Australia, will be connected to each other by highway, rail, or tunnel. Interestingly, the Pan-American Highway was just barely disconnected until this point. The massive highway that stretches all the way from Prudhoe Bay in Alaska down to Ushuaia, Argentina, is only broken by a 106-kilometer expanse called the Darien Gap, a giant stretch of untamed swamp and forest impossible to cross by conventional motor vehicle. Once a road across the Darien Gap can be established, the world will essentially be completely connected by ground-based transportation. If you're interested to learn more about the transglobal highway as it relates to Asia and some of the exciting upcoming events in that region of the world, make sure to watch this video by Kento Bento next. These are just a small selection of the likely events leading up to the middle of the century, and who knows what other surprises we have in store. The future might not be all flying cars and robots, but we certainly have some exciting and terrifying things to look forward to. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.